Hey everyone, and welcome to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
We are a sci-fi movie podcast. We talk about sci-fi movies every episode. Continuing our 70s sci-fi themed season here, we have a film called No Blade of Grass, which is a British film from 1970. We'll start spoiler-free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers, and from there we will continue on. So this is yet another film, and I really noticed a trend with this one. Like how many of these films from the 70s have been post-apocalyptic, or in the case of this movie, it's the start of the post-apocalypse, which I guess you would call the apocalypse, but you know what I mean. Like it's turning into that what we think of as the post-apocalypse, and you know, so they've either been that, or they've been AI computers go mad or go amok and get dangerous, right? There's been those two themes. So clearly there was two fears in the 70s. There was that we were going to ruin everything either through plague, nuclear wars, or in this case just climate change, and we'll talk about that in a minute, or they were scared of computers because computers were suddenly starting to feel like a really known thing, not a household item yet, I'd imagine, but at least enough that people were talking about them in movies a lot, and people were starting to understand what a computer was. So that's were the two main things that seem to be the big themes of the 70s. So this one is right at the start of the apocalypse, like I said, where we have characters who are on the run. And much like some of the previous films we've just talked about, there is a quote-unquote promised land. There is a farm up north that is going to have a lot of food supply and going to be easily protected because it's got a nice sort of entrance and whatnot. So the main character, John Custance, his brother owns this farm, so that's where he's going to take his family, his wife, his teenage daughter, and then Roger, who he works with, who's a scientist but also happens to be kind of the boyfriend of his teenage daughter, even though he's like 28 or something. Like whatever, different time. It's a different time. So
different continent.
Along the way, they also pick up other people along the way. I mean, it's actually, given that you've said that, I should point out at the very least that the age of consent in the UK is 16. So technically not illegal. I'm assuming it was still the same in the 70s. I actually don't know if it changed at some point. If anything, I imagine it used to be worse rather than older.
You guys call yourself civilized.
I wasn't even born yet. What are you blaming me for?
I thought you said it's still the case.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's just still been there. Like, I'm not in Parliament. I'm not making these laws.
Ew. All those child brides out there in the UK. I had no idea. I'm going to start my own women's rights in the UK initiative. Age of consent 16? That's a child. That's disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Why is it my fault? What did that? I was just born into that world. I don't know it.
Oh yeah, just following orders, huh? Disgusting.
I respond to any of this. I would love to see some statistics between the UK and the US and see how many older people are actually having sex with 16-year-olds. Because I'm going to put money on a per capita basis that the US actually wins. I'm going to put money on it.
These are not facts that I want to look up.
Well, you're just going to have to accept that you're not winning this argument, and we can move on.
Okay. You know what? Go ahead. Look it up. I'll wait.
I don't want to search for that.
You want to put money on it?
I'm not having that in my search history. Like, I agree 16 is too young. Is that what you want from me? Is that what you wanted? Right?
Yes, and I think your government should agree too. Get on it, Queen.
Let's get back to the matter at hand, okay? Back to the movie, which I was describing was the journey north to this farm, and along the way they pick up some more people, which presents its own drama, and that is the basic gist of the film. All right, so I guess I'll ask the question, Tara, how do you feel about No Blade of Grass?
I don't like it.
That's very to the point.
It's all right. Like, it it's okay. It's not. I don't think it's very good. I think it's edited in a way that's very odd, and like it's trying to. I don't want to call it preachy because I think the message is important, but it's like I hate the narration, and I have to say, like, I know there's like a note at the end of the film when the credits come up where it says like no animals were harmed in the making of this movie, but there's so many dead animals. Like, what do you mean no animals were harmed? Like, where did they come from?
Hold on. Correction. I have to correct something here. The exact line was, no living creature was harmed during the making of this film. It did not say anything about taking animals who were already dead.
Okay. There's so many dead animal carcasses. Like, I just don't believe that they weren't for this movie.
I mean, that's fair. Like, they put the statement there. I mean, they clearly want us to believe that they weren't harmed. I don't.
Yeah, I know. I looked through the trivia, like the IMDb trivia, to see if there was anything about it. And another thing that was listed there was like the rape scene. Oh, there's a rape scene.
We're not in spoilers yet. Jesus.
Spoiler. There's someone gets raped, and somebody of a certain age, very young age, gets raped.
You just spoiled who it is. Now you're spoiling it who it is. What are you doing?
No, I'm not saying who it is.
There's only one character. We had an entire debate.
That was spoiled because you said that.
We had a whole debate about one character's age of consent, and then you said someone of a certain. Who else can it be? Who else can it be?
I think people going into this movie should know that a 16-year-old is like depicted as being raped, and you see some boobage, and apparently, like, there's some debate as to the movie claims that they had a body double for that part, but apparently that is not, like, that's under a lot of skepticism. So if that is, then maybe the animal thing is too. I don't know. This movie really comes off as gross to me. I didn't like watching it. That's fair.
Very strong opinion. Stop clicking or tapping or whatever it is you're doing.
Okay. You're right. I am beginning with something. The movie is fine. There's some confusing choices that the director makes. I don't really think it's really strongly directed at all. Like, I just think it feels very choppy. The choice of music that they put as a score for certain scenes is very, like, opposite of what you're watching. And I don't know if they're trying to go for, like, satire, but it's usually just distracting. So I don't think it's a really well-made movie.
No, that's fair. I kind of agree with the technical side of things. I do think the story's interesting. And I think it needed more room to breathe, which is funny because I think a lot of these movies, one of the things that I've said is that they feel like the prototype for this type of movie and the actual story isn't there. I actually wouldn't say that about this one. I think the story is there. It just needed a little bit more time. Like, because it's again, it says like 95 minutes. If this had been like, you know, let breathe a little bit to about 2 hours long and gave it the time, because there's actually some pretty devastating things that happen that I don't think the characters react to with the weight that those events should be reacted to. And yes, one of them is the rape scene, which Tara has already spoiled for everyone. But you know, if it kind of feels like the father especially just kind of like, it feels like it's barely affected him. It's like a shrug it off and keep moving sort of thing, and I'm like, you should be,
well, cheerio then.
You should be
Bob's your uncle.
On your knees crying or screaming at the moon or something. Like, you should be reacting in some way to this. You know, so there's a lot of reactions that feel oddly muted, where everyone's just kind of accepted the way things are really quickly. That felt a little bit off to me. But the core ideas of what the story is and the core journey and the sort of various obstacles along the way, for the most part, work. I do think the rape scene itself is a little bit out of nowhere. There's an odd choice in this as well, that very early on, like, we have this thing where it kind of does these little flash forwards, like just for a quick little shot, like, and it's usually a sort of almost darkly ironic moment where someone will say, well, as long as this doesn't,
always,
there was one random one like later on where they're just walking in the field and there was like no prompting for it, but most of them, they come from like a line of dialogue. I mean, since you've already mentioned the rape scene, when she's talking about losing her virginity, because there's a whole point where she's talking to Roger, the boyfriend, it's like, oh, I've been thinking about it, and I think I want to lose it soon, because we're going to be on a farm, and like, you know, there'll be nothing to do. But that's the way she comes across. She's like, well, there's going to be nothing to do. We better as well start having sex. I mean, that was where they pass the time. That just seems like what to do. It cuts when she says that to like, not a shot of the actual rape, but the people who do it, like sort of grabbing her at the start of the scene, and just kind of implying that something dark might happen in that kind of context. And it does it a few times where it'll do these, like, it'll do this sting in the music, and it'll go to this frame, and before it cuts back, the frame will turn red, and then it'll cut back to what's going on. And I thought, this is kind of a weird, interesting choice where it's almost spoiling where the movie's going to go in multiple ways.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
in multiple contexts. So I thought that was a bizarre choice. Not necessarily one that I hated on its own. There's definitely some weird choices that I didn't care for. This one was more like, okay, this is different. I'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, you know something's going to happen, so it's kind of making you like, all right, so when's this scene? Like, I don't want to say I can look forward to this scene coming up, but like, you know something intense is going to happen later to one of the characters, so you're going to wait for it.
Arguably that one's a bit on the nose because it's really obvious what it's implying, whereas some of the other ones are like, it'll be someone says, oh, as long as nothing happens between now and then we'll be okay, and it'll cut to like a quick flash of one of them with blood down their face with holding a gun, and I'm like, okay, that one doesn't really spoil that much. It just says bad things are coming, which we kind of expect because it's a movie, but it doesn't actually spoil the specifics or how they get into that situation, whereas that one in particular, it felt like, well, clearly they're going to at least try and rape her, if not succeed. We'll talk more about the details what happens when we get to spoilers, but so that was a weird choice. It definitely wants to feel like it's kind of, because the opening like 5-10 minutes are very documentary-esque. There's a lot of like archive footage, there's a lot of real footage of things around the world mixed with some fake stuff about this plague that's like killing off all the crops and the wheat and things like that, and how that's sending everyone down this path. And it does this thing where it kind of jumps back to all these like sort of like scenes like establishing this in the news and things like that as we're starting the journey, as they're leaving the house that night. And there was one scene that made me think of you, because obviously you're vegan, and you often bring up how one of the reasons why you're vegan, not necessarily the only reason, but is because of what it contributes, the production of meat and all this stuff contributes to climate change. And as I see at the start of this movie, which is meant to be very kind of baiting, no pun intended, in a kind of ironic satire way, is as this news report's talking about all these problems starting on TV, it's in like a bar restaurant, and people are like eating meat, and it does all these close-ups of people just shoveling meat into their face and like cutting these big bits of chicken, and like this just lavish dinner table and all these things as they're talking about all these problems.
There's like cakes and stuff there too. It's very elaborate. It's clearly like too much food for the people who are eating it.
Yeah. And how kind of they brush things off. Say, oh, crap, have to take no belt then, jelly ho, and just all of it.
Yeah, this movie's really British.
No, honestly, the most British that it gets is actually the young son, because they go and pick him up from his boarding school halfway through, him and his friend, and these two kids, like,
are so polite.
They did not write these kids as kids. They wrote these kids as like posh men from like the 1700s or something like that, because the kid's friend, what was the kid's friend's name? I can't. Oh, this is an order of appearance cast list. God damn it, IMDb. Oh, pardon me. I hate that. I hate it so much.
I don't know. I don't remember the name of the kid.
Anyway, so he says, "Oh, I've got you a gift." To the what's the family name? Custance. To the Custance kids, like, oh, I've brought you a gift, and he's like, oh, that's awfully nice of you, and I'm like, kids don't speak like that. And then they discover that he's getting no one coming for him because his mum's dead and his dad's in one of the, he's in like South America where the problems are really bad, and there might be cannibalism and things like that, and
he just brings it up so casually.
Yeah, and
the cannibals.
So the Custance kids like, can he come with us, mummy and daddy? Can he come with us? And like, oh, go on then. And this kid just with a big grin again. He's just talked about the fact that his father might have been cannibalized. Like that's literally what just came out of his mouth. It's like, oh, that would be awfully nice of you. He's just so cheery.
He kind of talks like the friend in Jojo Rabbit, the one that is,
yeah.
who can't die.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of talks like that. But that was kind of intentionally funny and meant to be weird.
Yeah.
This is just like both these kids are just written really bizarrely. So that was odd. That was very odd. There's some weird things, like whenever anyone gets shot, I'm trying to say, instead of having a squib go off like a normal movie, they have like an optical effect on the screen showing blood, which is really weird.
Yeah, it's like an animated scene. It's like animated and intertwined with the regular film, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit style.
It's very odd. It's a very odd choice. I don't hate the movie though, as much as there's some elements that are kind of weird and even problematic. I do kind of appreciate what the actual story is, and like the fact that there's some beats towards the end that I kind of like, and the fact that it addresses kind of like various aspects of society crumbling, and this idea of trying to keep on to who we are and civilization, and not falling from that. Even though it doesn't do it in the best way possible, there's definitely better examples of it since, by far. But there's one thing in particular towards the end that I actually really like the decision that they made as filmmakers to do. And I'll talk about that in spoilers because it's right at the end. I can't talk about it any other way. But there's definitely some stuff in there. I do think that the transitions from the how severe things are and how they treat it goes like it's almost like just quick steps every once in a while, as opposed to a gradual like realization of things are this bad, which kind of makes it feel a bit stilted.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that like right away, because society turns super quick. And you don't really get a sense of how much time has gone by since the last scene, or since things were okay. So it's like, okay, all of a sudden there's a mob, or people are raping. It's like, or like they're talking about cannibalism. Like, hasn't it been like 4 days? Why are they going to cannibalism already?
Yeah. To be fair, the cannibalism, it sounds like it started in other countries first, and it sounds like the cannibalism's in the other countries. I don't think they speak about it being there yet in the movie.
Oh, I thought it was brought up later on about, or like somewhere in the middle, about cannibalism happening like in the UK also. Like when they're listening when they're listening to the radio at some point, I thought it was brought up there.
You may be right. Maybe I just didn't hear that line. But definitely early on, it was like, no, this is a thing that's in South America and some other places. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Like local, but things are progressing fast, very quickly. So. I don't hate it. I actually think it falls into kind of a similar line to some of the other movies that we've done. In that it's got a lot of problems. It's got things that I'm going to take apart. There's an insane flashback late in the movie, with I
don't want to talk about it.
The most egregious use of 70s Bush yet. It feels wrong to even just call it 70s Bush. It's beyond Bush. It's beyond the Bush, right? But it's there.
I don't think I've ever done this before, but I actually shouted the word "why" at my TV while watching the scene.
Yes.
Why?
I was telling you before.
Why are you showing me this?
Before we started, that my mouth was actually agape. Again, that's something I never do. I never find myself physically reacting to a movie. It's kind of a joke almost that US audiences clap at the movie theater and cheer and stuff, and British audiences just sit there in silence because that's the polite thing to do. So I never physically react to anything, but my mouth was like. And I was almost looking around as if I wanted to make eye contact with someone in the room. I was on my own, but I was like, someone make eye contact. I need to share this absurdity with someone right now.
Oh my god. I can't get it out of my brain.
It had to be like a prosthetic, right?
No.
I
looked it up.
Oh god, it's real?
It's real.
Where did they get the footage from? Because it wasn't obviously. Yeah, obviously it's not the actress, right? This has to be something from somewhere.
Everyone's definitely staying through the.
I know what this is. Jesus. And this is the funny thing. We talk about the Hays Code and all that, or you've been talking about the Hays Code to be more specific. I feel like because this is a British movie, this has nothing to do with the Hays Code. This is just the filmmakers of this one movie being weird as shit.
This is just another choice by the director that I just don't understand.
Because, like, I don't think the rape scene is well done. I think I mean, partly the music is absurdly out of place in this scene. It's almost upbeat for most of the scene. But I get the idea of having that type of scene in the sense that society's breaking down. We're at the point now where, it's kind of like what we're talking about with The Boy and His Dog, like the idea that this is the state that the world's going to, where everyone is just this bad. Like, I get the idea of having a scene that shows that people are turning that way. I don't know if I necessarily needed it to this extent, or it's certainly not portrayed this way, but I get the thinking of that.
Sure, like, people don't realize the things that they're asking for, or take things for granted, I guess.
Yeah.
Something like that. But I'm surprised that they actually had to cut out more time, because it's kind of a long scene.
It is, yeah. That's a very long scene. And because it was funny, as soon as the movie was starting, I was thinking to myself, wait, if society's crumbling, you're letting your teenage daughter like ride in a different car. I felt like she's almost the biggest target in terms of, like, if you encounter bad people, right? Yeah. Presumably gangs of men, she's going to be the thing that they latch onto and like want to steal for all the nefarious reasons that you would think of. It's just that type of story. So, and it's very nonchalant in the way they're just kind of driving. So it's like they're going for a country drive, even though they like run into riots and shit like that on the way out of the city and whatnot. Like it comes across as just very, we're going on a camping trip. It's very, very, quietly, and we'll get to all details as we go into spoilers. But No Blade of Grass is certainly something. I mean, I guess we're going to talk about spoilers though. I think we're at that point.
Yeah, probably.
Is there anything what about the performances? Did you like any of the cast, or?
I mean, I think it's pretty well acted. There's some character choices that I don't quite understand. That's mostly from the father. But otherwise, it's the acting's all right.
Yeah, and they've got that thing where they've got this extra person along with them who's a bit of a wild card, who might actually kind of be one of the dangerous people. But is it good that they have him with them and he's on their side, because that's an asset in this new world, even though even though it could be dangerous.
I mean, his scenes are probably the best, most interesting, and his character even too, because there are times where you're on his side or you think he's good, like, I don't know, and like you said, like, he's a wild card. Yeah. But
he's not likable.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad movie. I just don't think it's particularly good either. And like I said, there's just a lot about it that makes me uncomfortable to watch.
No, that's fair.
It's just the age, and I just don't buy the statement that they make at the end of the movie. I'm sorry.
That's fair. I didn't necessarily feel I had a reason to doubt it necessarily. But I mean, you've told me something else that doesn't quite add up, so I suppose I shouldn't really trust them at this point.
Yeah. And the girl was 15 when they shot the movie.
Really? Oh, geez. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's yeah.
A little iffy.
Yeah, like I mean, it doesn't really make much of a difference to me. Like if that's what the story is, that's what the story is. But the idea that they didn't use a body double for potential nudity in the scenes, that's
it's icky.
That's a line that's been crossed. If that's the case, so I don't know about that. I think that the core story is kind of there though, and I think there's a lot of the things that you kind of expect from this story. I don't think it handles them the best, and there's definitely some weird elements to it. So I feel like I'm kind of slightly more positive than you, but not to like any great extent.
I mean, yeah, I was kind of hoping that this would be like a good follow-up to like The Day the Earth Caught Fire, another UK movie about environmental disaster. But this is obviously, like, I'm going to be pro more people being aware of the damage that they cause or whatever. Like, it's sort of my jam. But I just don't, just looking at this from a movie I'm just not comfortable. Like, the message is there, and the warnings are there, and it's definitely something that we should make movies about. I suspect we'll get more in the future as things get worse.
I think we have to mention, though, because I was actually kind of surprised at some of the things this movie brought up at the start when it was in its sort of newsreel kind of section, how similar some of it actually was to just information today. I guess I'm actually kind of surprised how aware we were of climate change as far back as 1970. I'm like, I didn't realize it was, because I didn't really know about it as a kid that much. I'm kind of shocked that this. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more effects of it visible today than there was in 1970. But it's interesting to me that this movie actually.
Well, it's not just that, but like when you watch the footage, you see just a lot of pollutants. I think this was not too long after Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring came out about the mosquito pesticide that was used commonly and was actually getting into the ecology. And yeah, it killed the mosquitoes, but it also like the birds would eat the bugs, and then the birds would get eaten by larger birds, and then the eagles, like when they lay their eggs, their eggs would be like transparent, so all the eagle populations were dropping because of a pesticide that we use to kill. So like there's, I mean, the movie was mostly focusing on the pollution side of things, like that, and around this time is when you get like a lot of the EPA standards and just air quality laws and pollution, water pollution laws, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a movie with a message, and I think the argument for the harshness of it and everything that happens in it would be, this is supposed to be this stark, wake up call of this is how bad things will get if we let things actually get worse. And I don't think
they sort of refer to this movie as a documentary that could happen.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. The final line of narration at the end of the movie, which is, I don't think it's a spoiler to say this because it's not anything to do with the actual plot itself, but the final line is of text that says, "This was not a documentary, but it could be." And that's how the movie ends. So it is. I mean, I think any movie with these themes has a message, but I think this movie really wanted to hammer it home and say, no, this is a warning. We want to warn you that how things could get. All right, so we'll move out to spoilers then for the movie. Before we start that section, though, I will thank our Patreon producers. At the time of recording, by the time this goes up, they might have changed a little bit. Hopefully, there's more even. But so thank you to David Short, Alison M. Fordyce, Cindy Palacios, and Tyler Hess. That means that they're all patrons at the $20 above tier. They don't have to be patrons. You don't have to be a patron at that high, though, do they, Tara?
Why no? If you like what we do and you want to support the channel, you can check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/MelloFuzzTV, and donating as little as $1 per month will get you bonus episodes of our show. So check it out. See how you think of the Transfer Saga, of Judge Dredd, of Time Cop, and a bunch of other Mystery Science Theater adjacent style movies. Thank you.
I love that you mentioned the same three things. Every time you're recommending the bonus episodes, you always say the exact same three things.
We haven't done that many yet.
I mean, number 9 just went out.
And there's a lot of forgettable ones. Not our reviews, but forgettable movies.
Sure, yes. Yes, Robo Vampire, maybe it wasn't the gem that we were hoping. So, full spoilers then for No Blade of Grass. So, yeah, like we said, they start their journey, they encounter a riot, they kind of get through that, not particularly big deal. But it's after this that, the dad, John, is inspired. He's like, okay, we have to get guns. And this was in a time where you could still buy a gun in the UK, because you can't do that now, not as easy as this. They go to this sporting and guns goods store, and they go in, and the guy's like annoyed because they've woke him up, and the demand, and he's like, oh, have you got your permits for these to buy guns? And he's like, oh no, I kind of left in a rush. He's like, well, sorry, I can't sell you to them. And so they hold him up at gunpoint because they need the guns, right? They need to get firearms for protection. And then this is when we're introduced to Perry, who's kind of this wild card character who comes in sort of like, holds off our characters and says, no, what are you doing? And when they're at gunpoint, they explain, look, things are getting worse. It's not going to get better. The government's lying to you. We're going to this farm. Let's defend. We can defend it. Blah blah blah. and the old man just insists that he's not doing this. And what I thought was going to happen here is that because Perry says, "Oh, hold on, let's hear what they have to say," I thought he was going to just turn his gun and hold, just point at the old man and say, "Okay, now sell them, and I'll go with them." He doesn't. He actually just shoots him right there and then,
and he just kills him.
And I was like, well, that was a bit of an escalation, and we're already at that point. And our characters, like, I feel like, they look a little bit shocked, but they don't react that much to it. And I'm like, come on, like they just killed him in front of you.
Yeah.
But extreme, but an extreme side. But
yeah, after they already said, like, we could just tie you up and keep you from. We'll tie you up, and then we'll just keep you from, like, coming after us when we leave or whatever. And that also seemed like a good solution. So, and, Perry was there to hear that other option, but he still went with the option of, I'll just murder him. And quick and easy.
To be fair to the movie, though, it does treat Perry as a character, as the movie goes on, as someone who is wild, and he does murder more people, he does do other things, and he's clearly the person who was almost born for the post-apocalyptic lifestyle. Like, it's almost like he's been waiting for this anarchy to just sort of be free.
Yeah, he's pretty natural in it.
Yeah.
But he's also useful.
Yeah, because he's good with a gun, and he's he's willing to, like, fight. So, and we're also introduced to his wife, who sort of saunters into the scene, who's a very interesting character in this movie. She's not there for super long. She's because they follow in their own car with everyone else, which is already two cars. It's worth mentioning because the parents have a car, and then Roger and the daughter ride in the second car, and when they stop for, like, lunch at some point, basically Perry's wife kind of, like, just sort of says hello to John, and John looks at her and goes, "Aren't you cold?" Because she's clearly not wearing a bra, and she's got this, like, blouse on, and her nipples are kind of,
she's like pushing her boobs up at him. Yeah.
And she's like, "No, I'm not cold," and she's being all flirty. And when they get back to the car, Perry's like, "You embarrassed me. What was I doing? I told you not to wear that blouse." And he's, like, super, possessive of her, but she is also really flirty with, like,
she's also just throwing herself at men.
Like, left and right. Like, this is her character. She's such a caricature. And this happens again. It's when they've all stopped, like, some sort of farmhouse for the night. She comes in to John when he's on watch, and I mean, I'll give him credit. He kind of, like, calls her out on what she's doing quite quickly, because she's sort of asking, like, just inane questions. He's like, "Well, I don't know what you're doing here, but if you think I'm going to give it to you, you've got the wrong idea." And he's very quick to sort of point out that's not happening. Go away. But she sort of forces a kiss on him, and then that's when Perry walks in and gets all angry.
I mean, you say force. He seemed pretty into it.
Well, thanks, Gus. Just invade the podcast, why don't you?
Yeah.
Silly kitty.
Okay.
But regardless, she throws a kiss on him, and of course it's just as he's pulling her away that Perry walks in and is like, "Ah, well then, look at this," and John tries to explain, and Perry, it turns out, isn't actually that mad at him. He's only mad at her because this is a constant thing with her. So
he thinks he's some, like, counselor or something.
Yeah, he just basically says he's going to kill her because, I mean, like, there's no laws anymore. Like, and he's like, "Well, it's the laws of the group." Well, yeah, but, like, that's over now. Like, I'm going to kill her. My self-respect is worth something to me. So he kills her, and she dies there. So,
and John can't really do a whole lot about it because he still acknowledges that he needs Perry.
Yeah. So it's kind of that thing that we see in some of these post-apocalyptic stories of, like, people, like, becoming darker versions of themselves. They have to sort of give up some of their humanity to survive. And this is kind of, part of that. It is worth mentioning, there's a couple of scenes before this where he's kind of staring at the daughter a little bit, because I was wondering if he was going to try something with the daughter, at some point. I suppose in a way he kind of does, but not. I was expecting he might try and assault her.
It wasn't an obvious way, though.
Yeah. Instead, like, he's just talking to her, like, the next day when they're walking, and eventually Roger looks like a little bit jealous, and he says, "Hey, why don't you come walk with me?" And Perry goes, no, she's walking with me. And the dad's like, "Well, why?" He's like, "Oh, I think you know why." And it becomes this, like, weird standoff where like both him and Roger are like ready to like shoot him, and he's like, no, I'm a widower now, and she's a single girl. And the interesting thing about the end of the scene is that she actually steps in eventually, says, stop this, I want to stay back here with him, I feel safe with him.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, especially since she was coming on so strong to Roger. Like, we assume that they're in a relationship, but we don't really know exactly what the relationship is. And
given the opening conversation, I have to assume they were in some capacity.
Yeah, or like maybe she was just really interested in him, but he was like trying to wait till she was older or something. I don't know. But in any case, this happens after she gets raped. She gets raped because she was taken from the vehicle when she was with Roger, and he wasn't able to protect her. But I think she
wasn't with Roger in that scene. She was with the parents because the boys were riding with Roger.
Oh, okay.
Because her and the mom.
But I mean, after that scene, like, he goes to like touch her face or like give her a kiss or something, and she like immediately
it's the next day. He goes for a kiss and she kind of pulls away and he says, "What? Don't you like me anymore?" And all I could think was, she was raped yesterday.
Raped. Yeah,
like yesterday. Read the room. Now's not the time.
Yeah,
this was literally yesterday.
But I mean, you have to think, like, because of that what happened to her. Now she wants to be with somebody who's tough, like, who can protect her.
That part makes sense.
It felt real. I don't know. It felt like a real response.
It's not attraction, at least not in the typical sense. It's more of a he can just he can take care of himself, so I'm going to latch myself to him kind of thing. We have to talk about that scene because it's basically Roger and Perry are kind of having a bit of a pissing contest, like racing each other, and they kind of get separated from the car that has the parents and her in it. Mary's the daughter, for the record. I keep saying her, or the daughter. And they get out at one point at the crossing guard, and it turns out to be a trap. And these three guys sort of jump out, knock the dad out, and take the mum and the daughter to a separate little area, not too far from them, but just nearby. And what I thought was weird is, I thought because the other two cars sped ahead, that they weren't going to come back to help. They weren't going to realise that they were, gone or missing like in time, and they're going to come back really late. They actually came back quite quickly. It just cuts to them being there again, and they go and find them. And I because of the timing, I actually thought they were going to jump in and save them before the actual rape happened. It was clear that it was.
Well, yeah, because when the father wakes up, and he's like, I don't know where they are, but you can hear screaming in the distance, so they don't sound like they went very far.
Yeah, the timing made it feel like they were going to jump in and save them just in time. But we have this scene where both Mary and the mother are raped, and it's a really weird scene because the music's really like ill-fitting. It definitely feels like a 70s rape scene. If you've seen anything like not so
I
much.
already thought the scene was too long. I can't imagine that they would have it like minutes that they cut out of the scene.
Oh, did they cut out minutes of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it definitely made me think of things like Last House on the Left, or not quite as extreme as I Spit in Your Grave is really extreme, but like it definitely, and those are both 70s movies. They're both from the 70s, and it's definitely something that happened, like, or as a subgenre that kind of, the rape revenge genre definitely sprung up during the 70s, and it was definitely reminiscent of some of that stuff. What was really weird about it, though, to me, is just how, like, so the mother gets this kind of moment of revenge because, Perry comes in, he shoots one of them, kills them, one gets away, and then the one who was with the daughter, Mary, he just shoots in the leg, so he's sort of lying there alive, begging not to be killed. And it's actually the mother, Anne, who says, "Give me the gun," and she takes the revenge and shoots him. So she gets to have some sort of modicum of revenge, and I thought it was weird how, like, John, the father, it never really feels like it affects him all that much. Like, there's like one moment at the sort of picnic sort of time, like the next day or whatever it is, where he kind of like holds his daughter and says, "If I could go back and change things, I would." And she's like, "Oh, of course, I know that, father." And that's the extent of the heart-to-heart
That's it, yeah.
we get from him after his daughter's been raped. It's such a I don't know, like the level of like feeling that seems to reverberate around all the characters because of this like traumatic event that should be like the big sign that hey, the world's went to absolute shit. This is happening now, like to this extent. So it is a really weirdly long scene.
It's also like it's a little gratuitous. Like you do see some nudity with the girl that we're not sure if it's her or not. And then they like put effort to put blood on her inner thigh that we can see, like we know she's a virgin. It's just extra gross. I don't know. Like it's grossly written, and I don't think it's depicted very well.
Yeah, even
and it's questionable.
Even
I hate this.
Even the way it kind of like lingers on them, like because they take a long time getting like, how do I phrase this delicately, like taking off their clothes. Like there's a lot of like getting to the tights and then getting to the underwear, and like there's a lot of like you know cutting them off with like a knife or whatever it is. Like there's a lot of steps to it, you know, while they're struggling. That makes it feel especially kind of, I don't know, drawn out, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a little, you know,
which at the time I sort of, you know, as it was happening, I thought to myself, because I was still expecting them for the others to jump in and stop it from happening, I thought, okay, I get why you're focusing on this part of it, because it's like, you know, giving them time to get here, right? But also this sort of sells how extreme it is without actually going the whole distance, but then it happens anyway. So
yeah,
you know, like I feel like the better way of doing it would have been basically jump in when the other character arrives and sort of see the aftermath of it, as opposed to all of the actual chaos we see during the scene. Because it's especially it's a brutal scene. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. I mean, I suppose you could argue it's effective in that sense, but when you're watching it, I don't think you're sort of sucked into it in the way that you are with a movie that's got you by the balls. It's more like it's more like a meta thing where you're sort of looking at it as a movie and you're sort of going, okay, so you're doing this then, all right,
yeah.
You've made this choice, okay.
Yeah, I mean there are you know, rape. I mean, I don't know how you can make a rape scene tasteful in a film, but like there are movies with that subject in it where I don't feel like I don't feel as gross watching it.
Yeah, obviously this is a gross portrayal more than anything else. I think one of the problems with rape in movies is that often it's used as a really cheap way of like making something hateful. Like, you know,
Sure.
how do you make your villain an obvious villain? Well, you have them do that, and
Sure.
sometimes it comes off as a really lazy like way of trying. You know, it's like if you're not going to make your story specifically about that and about the survival of that, or about the, you know, whatever facet of it you want to tackle, if it's just something you're throwing in there as a plot device, then do something else, because it's lazy and tasteless. But like I think I think the threat of it should be in this movie. I don't know if it needed to actually happen. Like I think the threat of it makes sense.
Yeah.
Given the world that they're trying to set up and the anarchy that's becoming of the world, it makes sense. But I don't know if, like, I don't know if
We didn't need it like a shot by shot.
yeah, if it needed to actually happen, which I don't know, I'm not even sure if it did, but if it needed to actually happen, then I think there's just better ways to show it than what they did here.
I agree.
I suppose at least if like afterwards they were all devastated and the father was like, you know, beside himself, and if they all reacted as if what we had just seen happened, it might actually make it play a little bit better, because at least the characters are responding to it, to the horrific levels of what we saw. Instead, it feels like it's all forgotten about in fight. But
even the mother who, you know, had that happen to her, she still like goes back to the character she was before for a while.
Yeah, I mean, she has like one or two more lines about it. Although it's always about her daughter, though it's never about her, which makes sense. I get why she would sort of like ignore herself and just be concerned about her daughter's, like, you know, experience. I mean, that does make sense, but not to say that she wouldn't need therapy, because she absolutely does. But I get why her thought process would be, I'm going to forget about myself and just think about my child, because that's, you know, what a parent does. So yeah, everything with the teenage daughter in this is either weird gratuitous, or the politics that arise from her, like, and who she's with, and the way her father kind of like almost has to back down eventually and accept that she's making a choice to be with this person who we think is dangerous. And then the weird thing is that after this point, like, Perry never really does anything else that's kind of dark. Everything that he does in the movie that's dark or questionable that make us think that he's dangerous happened before this, and then he eventually just sort of dies in the final shootout by the end. And all I could think was, like, I felt like it was missing like a conclusion where she either, like, I don't think it was a cheesy ending where Roger kind of proves that he's like capable of, like, you know, being her partner or something
protecting
like that.
her, or something. I
don't know if it needed that. Like, maybe like the right ending still for them to not be together, but like I felt like it was missing some sort of acknowledgement after he died that either she cared that he's dead, so she's upset about it, or B, she's realized that, you know, she didn't care about him and it was like all of her feelings were for the wrong reasons or something. Like it felt like it was missing some sort of wrap up to that particular thread.
Right. I mean, her protection's gone, and maybe that's the only thing she cared about.
Yeah.
Or even if the arc is that she can trust her father to protect her again, or something.
Yeah, and even because I think Roger did have his arm around her at the ending during the funeral stuff, and all I could think was there was an entire conflict scene where in front of her parents she proclaimed that she didn't feel safe with you and she felt safe with this other, like, stranger. Like, I mean, times are so rough that, like,
take what you can get.
I guess, but like I feel like he'd have a hard time, like, you know, not feeling belittled by that for the rest of his life.
Yeah, probably.
But I mean, it is what it is. So at one point they get ambushed by some old men who, like, take their cars at gunpoint. They don't kill them, they let them take some clothes, but like, no, we're taking your supplies for ourselves. So they go walking from then on, and eventually they actually encounter a couple of different things. They encounter a farm and they actually murder the person who lives there because he comes out with a gun, and they plot and plan to do it as well. They also murder some soldiers. There's like a crossing at one point where they're not going to get let through, so they murder the soldiers. They ambush them. As a roadblock.
The farm is also where, like, they shoot the farmer and then they go into the kitchen area and they shoot the farmer's wife, I guess. That's where you get the animated blood.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, there was a couple later on as well, but that was the first time I think it was really noticeable. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And you know,
to tomato soup.
There's a line here about how John was in the military of some kind at one point, and he's not proud of it. He doesn't like killing people, and I feel like that's definitely the arc you want for your main character here, is someone who doesn't want to be this savage but is forced into it. Right? You know, this character who's losing his humanity and is aware of it. I don't think they lead into it enough, though. This is another thing that I think needs more time. Like, I'd flesh it out and do more with that arc.
He doesn't seem to change very much from the beginning of the movie to the end at all. Like, he's still the same guy with the same tone of voice, and people just follow him because they think he's a leader.
Here's the thing, though. There's a great decision they make with him at the end, and I think that if the arc had more time spent on it, it would have been a wonderful conclusion to his character arc. And it's basically when they encounter this other group of people, this bigger group, and they want to recruit them, so they come in and say, hey, like, I've got this place, come with me, accept me as your leader, and we can go there. And the leader tries to shoot him, so he shoots him back, or Perry shoots him maybe instead. I can't remember who it was, but
I think it was Perry.
The group basically all one by one say, yeah, we'll come with you. Yeah, you seem like you know what you're doing. So he gets this big group of maybe a couple dozen people, families, you know, husbands and wives and some kids. And
some pregos.
And a pregnant woman, which is very important for later. And they start walking. I'll skip over that scene. We'll come back to that big one that I talk about. Because they get to the farm and the brother's like fortified that he's got some men of his own. They've got a minigun. Like you know, they've got it really well protected.
Yeah, they got like a Gatling gun.
And
on a tower.
And he goes inside, he talks to his brother, and his brother's like, look, obviously I agreed on the phone to accept you, your family and Roger, but there's not enough farmland here to support all these people. We can't let them in. It's just you and your family and Roger, and that's it. And, you know, obviously he's made all these promises, and he's like, I can't just, you know, say that to him. They're going to delete us alive. And he says to him, well, how about this? How about in the middle of the night, you sneak away, we'll let you in quietly so they don't know you're doing it, and then they're out there on their own and they can do what they want after that. And he says, yeah, that's a good idea. And even if that was what he was going to do, I'm like, okay, that's a nice dark ending where he has to accept that he has to screw over these people. That's an interesting choice. That's an interesting character beat for him to take. But I was actually genuinely surprised and interested in the choice that they make here, where it immediately cuts to him telling the whole group, no, we're going to attack this place because they're not letting you in. He stands by...
Yeah, that's true. I was not I was surprised by that turn of the character, because I thought that he would do anything for his family, but really he's doing anything to stay the leader of this group of people.
He stands by the promises he made to this group of people. He takes them under. They've kind of become an extended family. Now, I do think there could have been more of a story with them to really build up that relationship, to really sell like his arc as a leader, and like. But I do think this as an ending to his character arc is actually really. I mean, I think the rest of the arc's kind of like not there, or it's kind of just, you know, very thinly there. But I do think it's an ending to his potential arc. I think it's actually really strong. I was actually genuinely quite surprised that he's like, no, I was going to try not to kill my brother. I don't want to kill him, but we're going to have to fight our way in because I made you this promise. We're going in there.
Just don't kill my brother. Looks like me, but with white hair and 2 eyes.
And he gets killed, unfortunately. So it's this sad kind of ending. Perry gets killed as well in the turmoil. And the movie kind of ends with, you know, the big funeral scene for all the characters who have died.
There's one scene with John early on when he goes to the gun shop and he picks up a Mauser for the first time, and like I immediately just went, oh, that's a Bond villain, because he's got like an eye patch, a Mauser pistol, and like the British accent. He like immediately transforms into a Bond villain. Made me laugh.
Mr. F.
Yeah.
It's an Arrested Development joke for those of you playing along at home. So, yes, but let's talk about the scene that made my jaw drop, and made you shout out, why? Why?
Why are you showing me this?
So, the pregnant woman, during... You know, they pick up in this big group. They actually end up hiding at a castle for one night, resting during the long walk. And she goes into labour, and there's like a couple of, you know, women who have been her mothers already. They have no midwives, but they've had people who have went through childbirth, so they're there to help. And you're thinking that I'm about to tell you we see something disgusting from this pregnancy. We don't actually see anything from this pregnancy. We get one of the most unnecessary, gratuitous flashbacks I have ever seen in a movie, where Anne, you know, John's wife, has a flashback to when she was giving birth to one of her kids. And okay, fair enough. I mean, I don't think we need it, but we cut back and she's on the hospital bed and she's sort of yelling in pain, and there's a couple of doctors, you know, John's holding her hand, you know, being the loyal husband by her side. And
push, darling, push.
And this is the thing. So during this scene, like I'm guilty of looking down at my phone at Twitter or something. I don't know what I was doing, but I looked down at my phone, and when I looked back up at the screen, do you know what I saw? I saw the most extreme version of 70s Bush that I have ever seen in my life. I saw
it was an actual birth. It
was a baby's head coming out of a vagina in all its glory. No obstructions, no out of focus, nothing like in the front of it in the frame, not an angle where you can only see like a part of it. No. This was full on, dead eyes staring at the vagina.
And it was a real vagina.
Yeah, because
I'm looking it up right now.
Because I said this to Tara before we started recording. I said, well, I assume it was a prosthetic because, like, you know, they had a baby coming out of it. They didn't just, you know, but apparently they had real footage of a birth. Here's do you know what this makes me think of, actually, and I know you never watched Friends, but there's an episode of Friends where Chandler sees someone give birth, and he's scared of sex for the next little while, and I always just remember this because when he's asked why he's scared of sex, he says it's kind of like when you first saw Jaws and you were scared to go back in the water for a while.
Yeah, you know, so I guess the director like went to a hospital and like talked to a couple who were going to give birth and got permission to just set up a camera and record it. And the couple agreed to that if they could keep a copy of the tape so that they had their childbirth from like the cinemas. I don't want to say CinemaScope, but like the 25 millimeter or whatever it was footage. So it's just like a camera that's placed there, and all the equipment was like sterilized or whatever, so it could be in the delivery room. And that's just some woman's vagina that she donated to art. And that's a real baby coming out. Yep.
I'm making a face right now for the audio listeners. I was making a face throughout that entire thing. Why would you want to watch this again? This is horrifying. Secondly,
no, people do it all the time. People film the birth all the time.
Why would you want to say that? It's disgusting. Right. Anyway,
apparently it's beautiful.
Couple things.
I don't have kids. I have a dog.
Couple things. It is CinemaScope, I think. If my memory serves me right, and there is no film size that's 25 millimeter. I just want to correct that.
I don't know. I read it on somewhere. I thought it was IMDb, but maybe it was Wikipedia.
35 millimeter is what you're thinking of, which is what most movies were shot in when they were shot in film. Some lower budget stuff is shot in like 16 mil or even Super 16, but
I don't remember them.
This is the thing. We're talking about how gratuitous this thing, how disgusting and in your face this is. I don't understand.
Definitely did not be there.
Yeah, why is it here? I mean, I don't even necessarily think the flashback's that important, but why the need for this shot? I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Like, just because they could, they felt the need to do it. Like, it didn't. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't find the thing I read about it, but I must have read it somewhere. Yeah, maybe during my research when I was looking for the animal stuff, but I came across that note.
So the rating for this was AA. This is an old rating that I don't understand. What was an AA? I want to know, like, was this like an adults only thing, or like was this like one of these weird things where it's technically suitable for all ages?
Well, AA would mean all ages, right?
that's what I'm worried about. I'm googling AA movie rating. The AA certificate. BFI. AA was a certificate.
Send this one back to the MPAA.
The AA certificate was introduced by the British Board of Film Censors in the 1st of July 1970. That's the year this movie came out, funnily enough. Passed as suitable only for exhibition to persons of 14 years and over. Oh, that's not too bad.
Okay.
I mean, let's be honest, I was watching anything from the age of 14 onwards.
Oh, yeah. So it was definitely I mean, even younger, my mom would drop me off at the movie theater, and if I got into the theater, then it didn't matter what I was watching.
Well, movie theaters were quite strict for us. Like, if you didn't look... Not
in Canada, they weren't as strict.
No,
sometimes they would ask, how old are you? But most of the time, they're just like, whatever. They were probably dumb.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it was never like an ID thing, but like, you know, if you didn't look old enough to get into a 12, or if you didn't look old enough to get into 15, they wouldn't let you in. But at home, I was watching stuff that was, you know, way above my age. But
oh, sure.
This was a byproduct of the decision to raise the age limit for X certificate films from 16 to 18. Oh, interesting. Now, obviously, all of this is redundant now because, I mean, I'd never even heard of this because this had all changed by, you know, whenever. Technically, so here, the AA certificate was abolished on the 1st of November 1982 following the general overhaul of the BBFC classifications recommended by the Williams Committee. It was replaced by the 15 certificate, which is what we've still got. So we have a 12, a 15, and an 18 for anyone who's not familiar with UK ratings. What's interesting about UK ratings is that when I was younger, almost everything that was R-rated in the US was an 18, and almost everything that was a PG-13 was a 15. It's completely changed now. They've softened so much now that almost everything that's a PG-13 is a 12, and almost everything that's R-rated is a 15. Very few films now are actually 18s. There's only a select few per year, really, that are 18s. And they're usually pretty obvious. It's usually stuff like, you know, Shame or something like that. It's almost got a lot of sex content in it.
Fascinating.
I thought it'd be mildly interesting as a film fan, but okay.
It's what the channel promises. Mildly interesting.
Clearly, I'm not impressed, Tara, with these ratings history.
I'm pretty sure you've told me this before.
Yeah. Well, I only brought it up because the AA thing. I don't know what that is. What does that mean? But that was 14 and up. So X rating was 18 and up, AA was 14 and up. Yeah, there you go. That's No Blade of Grass. I think that's it. we saved.
I think we covered all the major stuff.
Yeah, we saved the childbirth for the end because that was traumatizing.
Yeah.
God.
It was too real.
It was literally real. There was nothing not real about it. Oh, you could at least let me pretend that it was a prosthetic.
Nope. That's what women have to go through. All men should see it.
No. I mean, had you seen this before?
A birth? A childbirth?
From this angle?
Bits and pieces, not like a full thing like this, no.
That's the first for me, I'll tell you that. Jesus Christ. Alright, I guess we're rating the movie. If you would like to step in with the rating.
Yeah, I didn't really, like, you're right, it's an okay film. Like, it does have more plot than a lot of the movies we've watched have, and it's a good stepping stone for these types of films, and other movies are going to take this formula and make it a bit better, I think. But I didn't really enjoy watching it. Like, there are just some scenes that I can't forgive them for. And I'm sorry, I don't buy the statement at the end. There's a lot of dead animals. I don't think it was all taxidermy. And even if it was taxidermy, something had to kill those animals to get stuffed. And I didn't particularly enjoy watching it. So I'm going to give the movie a 4.5. I don't really think it's very good. I think the direction is also not great.
Damn, that is a rougher rating. I'm definitely a bit more positive, even though I agree with, the scenes that are problems, and the direction is a little bit stilted in places. There's a lot of, I mean, it's not even the direction so much as the editing. That's
the editing is hard.
It's just,
and the flash forwards, I don't really appreciate that style.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. It's definitely very rough. It's a very rough movie around the edges. I kind of appreciate what it was trying to do, and I do think it does get some moments and ideas right. Like I say, the decision at the end with John, I thought was good. A couple of the scenes, where they start being strategic, I liked. I do think there was more of a slower progression to really buy that they turned into these people, though. It felt like some switches had just been flipped. But I mean, I think I enjoyed watching it more than you did, despite all of its flaws. So I'll probably still give it like a 6 out of 10. I'll still go there. Admittedly, though, if this what you read about the maybe not being a body double for the actress in the rape scene, then that's a serious problem. That's the sort of thing that if I'd known that before we watched it, it might have put me off watching it.
Yeah, me too.
So. But now that I've seen it, it's like, well, I hope it was a body double. Anyway, that is No Blade of Grass. Obviously it's called that because literally the grass is dying.
Although there's a lot of greenery, but that's okay.
Yeah, they can't go and burn all of it, but because that's where the little flashbacks, they're burning like their garden because it's been infected. And it's like, nope, now it's been infected, we have to do this. I did think it was funny, though, that like the mum wanted to go to Canada. They wanted to leave earlier and go to Canada, but he's like, no, I'm an architect, and the building that I'm working on is not finished. We have to stay. So I thought it was funny that Canada was the safe haven, and then later,
even the Prime Minister goes to Canada to hide out.
It's never mentioned in the movie. I don't think they actually mention it, but the description on IMDb does say that the garden they're going to is in Scotland. So I did think it was kind of funny that the safe haven was Canada, then Scotland.
Representation.
But they never actually mentioned Scotland, and there's definitely no Scottish accents at all.
Yeah, I don't think I heard any, but I'm not very good with accents.
No, they were definitely all English. Actually, having said that, the mum's accent was kind of weird. I thought there was like... She was
from Canada.
Was she from Canada? Yeah, she sounded like... I was going to say she sounds like she's American, but she's been living in England long enough that she sounds kind of half English as well.
Yeah, she probably is like a legit Canadian or American actress who lives in the UK. Because I think a lot of UK movies use the same like American actors all the time.
Yeah,
because they're just there and they want an American in their movie.
Because at first she just sounded English, but then every so often there'd be like just sentences here or there that sounded like more American. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but I guess, you know.
Yeah, and then she said Manitoba. Oh, my people.
I guess it's a good way to have an authentic character is actually just to hire someone who has a weird mixed accent like that. So, yeah, fair's enough, I suppose. Definitely, I mean, it kind of goes along the lines of a lot of these other movies we talked about from this batch of 70s movies. We've got more to come. We're not done yet, but interesting. So, you can, of course, let us know what you think of No Blade of Grass in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates, at the Ace Podcast even for specific sci-fi stuff. You can, of course, support us by rating the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars. People will find us that way. You can also support us financially, as we mentioned earlier, with Patreon. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. So you can do that. You want an Ace t-shirt or hoodie? Maybe a hat?
What?
You can do that at our Spreadshirt stores if you want to go and get one of those. Link in the description, as always. Tara, would you like to promote something else from MailFuzz TV?
If you're into sci-fi, we're reviewing classic Twilight Zone episodes. We're in season 2 right now. Probably still are because these seasons are really long.
Yes.
So, yeah, watch along with us.
Yep.
See if they hold up.
Yep, yeah, we're doing that. So, otherwise, though, that's us. That has been the Atomic Cinema Experiment. Thank you very much for joining us for this another post-apocalyptic movie. I think the next one we've got planned to do is also kind of post-apocalyptic, although it's not.
I've never heard of this movie, so I don't know what it is.
Although I don't think it's crops that are going. I think it's actually the population. It's people this time that are diseased. But regardless,
Nice.
another 70s movie about people in a post-apocalyptic world. I think again, this is from the brief description on the Criterion app. But that has been us. So thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction movies, guys. And computer, that's Elsa.
Why?